here we are, happy families. The Lumsden. Mr. Lumsden, the sometime waterboard man. Mrs. Lumsden, the sometime waterboard man's lady wife. And Master Lumsden, little drip off the old tap.
Sorry,
Father!
The character of Timothy Lumsden first bounced onto our TV screens in 1981. His bizarre domestic setup rang a loud bell with 13 million viewers, putting Sorry firmly on the sitcom map.
Mother, tonight you will see my bottom. Oh.
As the 40-something am-dram-loving librarian tied firmly to his domineering mother's apron strings, Ronnie Corbett steered an expert course between knockabout comedy and potential tragedy. Audiences young and old rooted for Timothy as he quipped and fantasised his way in and out of trouble. And there's no doubt that Sorry had an impact on the current generation of comic talent.
Ever since I saw you as Timothy Lumsden on Sorry, I knew I had to have you. Just bloody leave. Language, Timothy!
But way before Bubbles got her hands on him, the young Ronnie Corbett had discovered his own love of performing on stage at his local youth club. In the 1950s, Ronnie was a regular guest on Crackerjack, the BBC's top kids audience show, as well as appearing in West End Cabaret with another overbearing female, Danny LaRue. Spotted by uber talent scout David Frost, Ronnie was offered a role on Frost's new TV show, but he was committed to Lionel Bart's Robin Hood musical, Twang.
David took me out to tea and said, I'm doing this show and I'd like to be in it, but if Twang runs, you won't be able to be in it. So it was just funny, it's a blessing to me that Twang was such a major flop.
A blessing and a half. If Twang hadn't landed with a thud, Ronnie would have missed out on the BBC's Frost Report. He wouldn't have teamed up with fellow comedian Ronnie Barker, and a famous TV sketch would have been without a punchline.
I still look up to him, because although I have money, I am vulgar. But I am not as vulgar as him, so I still look down on him. I know my place.
After moving to ITV with David Frost's company Paradigm, in 1967 Ronnie starred in his first sitcom No, That's Me Over Here, written by Barry Cryer, along with Graham Chapman and Eric Idle, before they joined the Flying Circus. But after 3 series, Ronnie returned to the BBC, who teamed him up with Ronnie Barker to create one of television's most successful and lasting partnerships.
Count them out. 1,100.
1,100, sir.
1,100.
1,100. But we were both been in the business about the same length of time and with the same attitudes and same sort of middle class, working stroke middle class background. Ronnie being educated in Oxford, though not going to Oxford, and me being educated in Edinburgh, but not going to Edinburgh University. So we were both just, natural mates, really.
When writers Peter Vincent and Ian Davidson met on The Two Ronnies, it was another red-letter day for comedy partnerships. As the former producer of Do Not Adjust Your Set, starring future Pythons Michael Palin, Eric Idle and Terry Jones, Ian Davidson was a man of many parts, not all of them big ones.
So I turn up in Monty Python's. The only people who really know this are certain German fans, who, if ever I go near a Python event, they printed their book, certain Germans rush up to me and say, Herr Davidson. And they remember that I was the dead Indian on the pile of horse dung.
Dead Indian? What? Have you recently bought a new cook, has it?
Yes.
Oh, well, this is your free dead Indian, as advertised.
I didn't see that in the adverts.
Oh, no, well, it's in very small print, you see, sir, so as not to affect the sales.
We've no room.
Oh, it's all right. You can put the dead Indian in the spare room on top of the dung.
But he decided to write speaking parts for others instead, joining the Two Ronnies team, where he hit it off with Peter Vincent. Peter had started out as a teacher, then graduated to writing for the Frost Report. Though he didn't work with Ronnie Corbett until years later, he earned his spurs on shows like Dave Allen at Large, before joining the writing team serving the Two Ronnies, which also saw the start of his successful writing partnership with Ian.
Peter and I started writing together for, not as I remember, for any good reason, just because when talking one day we had a funny idea, so we sat down at a typewriter and did it.
They always say that two people writing together equals a third writer who's better than either of the other two, and I think that is true. I don't know where the magic happens, but it does happen somewhere, and that you have to try and make what you're doing, as it were, presentable to the other person.
I'm virtually incapable of writing on my own. I have to write with someone, because then I can make them laugh, and then I can give up and make them write and me do the laughing. Peter's much better than that. Peter can do it on his own, and will sometimes do pages of stuff. It pours out of him.
As Ian and Peter were pouring out scripts for the two Ronnies, the stars of the show had an arrangement with the BBC that while still working together, each would also be able to pursue their own solo careers. Ronnie B had great success with Porridge and Open All Hours, and now Ronnie C needed a project too.
We didn't, I suppose, feel like throwing all that kind of singular solo experience away, and much as we enjoy working together, it was very nice to have a break and do things we wanted to do, where we were our own governors, as it were.
Peter and I knew that the BBC were looking for a sitcom for Ronnie, and we were a bit miffed that they hadn't asked us, because we were doing quite a lot of work for the two Rons and knew the two Rons very well and were skillful at writing for them, but they didn't, so we wrote one anyway.
We went off to the country and wrote something, and when we came back, they'd already had a piece by somebody else which they'd recorded, so we thought, oh, well, that's probably the end.
But instead of ending up in the bottom drawer, their script about a middle-aged man being treated like a child by his manipulative mother found its way into Ronnie's hands.
I read it and thought it was very good. I gave it to Ronnie B and said, well, he said, I think this is the best thing that's been written for you in the sitcom world. And so I said to Jimmy Gilbert, who was then running the BBC sitcom department, I don't think we're going to worry about this pilot, Jimmy, because this is, I can tell you, I would do this without doing a pilot of it, read it. And he read it and agreed with me, and that was how it happened, really.
The script and the star were in place, so now a cast and a director were needed to bring the rest of the Lumsdens to life. David Askey had been shuttling between drama and comedy since the early 1960s, directing 50 episodes of the series Dixon of Dock Green, along with sitcoms like Doctor in the House and Maggie and Her. Sorry would be next.
David Askey directed them, produced and directed, and very, very successful, a very happy association, really, it was.
I think his casting was very good, I must say. I was amazed. I mean, those people, as soon as they arrived, they seemed to be the people in the show. My mother was perfect, you know, it was perfect casting.
Mother, I'm...
Look at your face.
What?
Lick.
Mother, that's a duster.
Look at you.
Oh.
Anyone would think you hadn't got a mother.
In the era of Mrs. Thatcher, it needed a special actress to make Timothy's monstrous mother sympathetic. Barbara Lott made her TV debut as Viola in the BBC's 1950 production of Twelfth Night. She appeared in one of David Askey's Dixon of Dock Greens, and in the 1970s played Diane Keane's mother in Rings on Their Fingers.
She was precisely what Ronnie needed. She was a person devoted to getting it absolutely right, as he was. And they were extraordinary together.
I don't think she'd played quite such a major role before then, but I mean, she was such a key role, my mother and me, that's what it was about. So she was very fortuitously excellent.
Muriel was the other woman in Timothy's dysfunctional life, his younger, bossy, independent sister.
Oh, Lord! Please don't let me stick this potato peeler into my
Oh, you dare! You dare! No, you are not.
Marguerite Hardiman's TV career started in Softly Softly in 1971, and she appeared in Crossroads and Robin's Nest before trying out for Sorry.
I went in and read for this audition, and it was for a dolly bird. There were always dolly birds that Ronnie was supposed to link up with sooner or later, and it all went wrong. And David said, oh, no, I'd like you to read for something else for me. So I read for this other character, and he said, well, you're not really right for it, but thank you for reading. And I went away and thought, well, obviously I'm not going to get either of those because I wasn't right for either of them. And about 3 weeks later, I think, my agent phoned up and said David had said, no, she's not right for this part at all, but I'd like her to do it. And that's, you think, oh, God, what's this going to be like? But it turned out to be Muriel.
Cast as Timothy's put-upon father was William Moore, a Coronation Street regular in the 70s as Cyril Turpin, and in real life married to Molly Sugden.
And I can remember being in the cafe on location the very first day and sitting with Ronnie and with Barbara And we were sitting there having a cup of tea, and David Askey came and sat down with us, and he looked round the table and started to smile. And I said, "Why are you smiling, David?" And he said, "Oh, I've got my family. I've got my family." He looked perfect together, and that's how it started.
So ends another meal at the Lumsdens. Total silence. Utter misery. Nobody spoke.
I spoke. The monster spoke.
You spoke, Mother, yes, but not to your daughter, Muriel, who is sitting next to you. You didn't speak to her, and she didn't speak either, Mother. What sort of family is this, eh? What sort of family?
The Lumsden family was complete, but the writers realised that Timothy needed a chum, someone outside the confines of 27 Ravenscroft Avenue, who he could talk to, who shared his love of amateur dramatics, and who could help move the story along.
You've got to have a friend who's a sort of sounding board. You can't just come out with your opinions. You've got to be talking to someone at the same time. So you provide, the writer provides this friend, and then, of course, the friend starts to take on a character of their own, and you invent that Timothy is trying to kid Frank that he's in charge, and all those things.
Tim! Hey! What's this? You look like something out of a midget submarine.
Mother knitted it for the Merchant Navy. Lucky for them, the war finished before she did.
Roy Holder was best known for his role as Chas Diamond in the kids' mystery series Ace of Wands in the early 70s. He appeared in ITV's All Our Saturdays, directed by Ian Davidson, and then as Kiddo in the sitcom Maggie and Her, working for David Askey.
The show was a great success. It was very funny, and obviously made a mark with David. And when he came to cast Sorry, then and I wasn't too tall, of course, couldn't be too tall. And when I saw the script, and I thought, "Oh, this is wonderful."
Frank, I suppose, was quite comfortable to offer him a kind of rather senior sort of counselling and kind of confidence building, you know, almost like a slightly older brother, really.
Oh, now, be honest now, Frank. You've never really been very keen on my mother, have you? Be honest.
Oh, no, I haven't. Well, you've not got a good word for her.
Well, I have, but if I said it out loud, they'd fling me out the pub.
At the beginning, I was thinking that Frank is very dominant and lays the law down as such, really. And you're thinking, well, why would he put up with this silly chap who's a few years older than him? You know, only a few, character-wise. Sorry, Ronnie.
Not surprisingly, considering Ronnie Corbett's popularity, when the first episode was shown in March 1981, over 13 million viewers tuned in, making Sorry an immediate hit. With the two Ronnies running at the same time, Ronnie C was the hottest property on the box, and although he was kept busy running between studios, that's the way he liked it. Live performance was meat and drink to him.
I think he enjoyed the studio because Ronnie, he's completely at home with an audience. You know, he understands audiences, and you can feel that sort of affection coming across the footlights, as it were.
I was always quite fortunate because of my kind of stand-up part of my life that Felix Bowness would do the warm-up. But if anything broke down, I could always relieve Felix and go and talk to the audience and do a couple of jokes and go back in the character. I wasn't so far away from being Ronnie Corbett. Timothy Lumsden was quite near Ronnie Corbett, really, so I could make the audience comfortable.
Ah, Peter Quance.
What's this, no bully button?
I like it.
We were blessed to have such lovely, imaginative writing with good stories, a really good story each week. I think Kingsley Amis said that in a magazine that he loved watching it because there was a short story in each episode.
He has a high regard for what he calls the boys. Peter and I are still called the boys. But he treats our work as something very much worthwhile, and he guards it and uses it properly, which is very flattering.
Ronnie Corbett is amazing, really. He's totally professional. He reads the script. He always has it learned, and he never changes anything. Not a single word, which is wonderful.
One of the great secrets we've always had is, and always known, and always not kept to ourselves, but we've treasured, is that Ronnie makes the short jokes. You don't ever make the short jokes. You leave Ronnie to do that. It's quite, I mean, he makes some very good jokes about being a relatively short man. But you must never. And he will be, quite rightly, I think, a bit piqued. He does those. You can write them for him and he'll go off and do them. But if you put them into the mouth of another character, or, God forbid, someone should make some such joke, he will take offence. Now, he's not outrageous about it, but we just knew that was one of the rules you had to follow, and we've always followed it.
You're not going anywhere without a decent meal inside you.
Mother, I shall be late.
You are a growing boy.
I'm not a growing boy. I'm 40 years old, Mother. What you see is all you're going to get.
I think I've always seemed to be the small person who behaves as though he's not small at all, sort of thing. And that was a bit, sort of, Timothy was a bit like that, you know, a confident little soul, really.
Honestly, Tim, can't you pick on someone your own size?
There is no one my own size.
And there was one time, I talk about a lot, where the Hungarian tramp in the library.
I must tell you that as the librarian up here, as the head librarian, I have vested in me the power to ask you, most politely, to leave the library.
And they say, go on, chuck him out then. All right, he goes, now, come on. And he goes, and I suppose you have to go. And he just stood up. The audience fell about. Literally, I think he couldn't speak his lines for 2.5, 3 minutes.
My God, yes, he's huge, he was, yes. And I changed my attitude, all right, turned round, and yes, I remember that being quite funny to look at.
Not if you don't want to, of course.
Ronnie is very funny when he preserves his dignity. You know that when you inadvertently trip over in the street, you don't hit the deck, but you straighten up and put on a sort of extra bit of dignity and look around the street. No one has noticed, of course, but he's very, very funny when doing that.
What it boils down to, basically, is that you have to be more assertive, really. You know, self-assertion is the thing. Right, you see?
Like two characters in a seaside postcard, Timothy's social ineptitude is a direct result of his overbearing, monstrous mother.
I mean, I've known such cases, and indeed one of the embarrassing things is when you write something like that, which is so distinct. Here is a man living at home with his parents, he's 41 years old, and he's afraid of women and the rest. They suddenly crop up, and you suddenly, oh, heavens, my wife's cousin. Oh.
I am 41 years old, Mother, and I am now going.
Then good riddance to bad rubbish.
I've done it! I've done it! I'm free at last! Free at last!
Well, she's not at all based on my mum. That's a very difficult question, because I don't think she is really based on someone I knew, only on someone we could sort of imagine.
You're a silly, irresponsible boy. Go into the house, go upstairs and go straight to bed.
We've all got mothers, and we've all gone through everything he goes through. To a certain extent, we've had, and of course, we all love our mothers, don't we? Yes, we do.
Mother also could be very snobbish, and her snobbery grew and sort of developed wonderfully.
The Folliots are special. They've been burgled 3 times this year.
Oh, poor thing.
Poor things? We haven't been burgled once. What's wrong with us?
Terrible housekeeper. I mean, just awful cook and awful things putting in front of him. And bullying dads and this terrible house.
Can she sew? Can she wash? Can she even cook like I can?
Yes, she can, but she's promised not to.
I remember once she had to slap Timothy. I think this was in rehearsal. She slapped Timothy quite hard, and his glasses flew across the room, about sort of 40 feet or something like that. And Barbara was horrified.
Get out of my way.
You'll have to slap me first.
With pleasure.
You know, it was a bit of violence that she wasn't at all violent. But Mother was quite violent.
I'll get my wallet.
Was it any wonder that to escape the frightful Phyllis, Timothy used his fertile imagination to create a fantasy world?
We felt the themes that we had to return to, his breaking away from the house and the fact that he couldn't, the fact that he always came back, were limiting in a strange way. And then we thought, well, you know, the imaginative life of such a person who really imagines they're quite a firm hand on the tiller and all those things, and he imagined he was rather sort of capable and the rest. And so we had the various mad fantasy sequences.
Done nothing, you know. Not worth anything.
You're worth more than you think.
Should have never been born, really. Goodness me, it's gone quiet.
Never been born. That's a good idea.
What?
All right, so you have never been born. You're round.
It's based upon the film It's a Wonderful Life. They go back home, and father is I think he's working in Group 4, and Muriel, of course, Timothy not having been born, is now the one with glasses who works in the library.
Whoops. Sorry. Apologising to the furniture.
Be quiet.
I'm saying to Muriel, I'll try and teach you how Ronnie acts and how he looks and how he behaves.
Peter had specific things that he wanted me to get in, so little mannerisms, you know, make sure you do that, and this would be a good thing to do, and that would be a good thing to do.
Peter is quite good at being me. I think when they write, Peter used to play me, or used to talk like me, or to try to, be similar to me. I suppose writers do that. I suppose they hear you saying things and they write what they hear you saying.
Why don't you stay? You know, if you're lucky, you could get a piece of Mother's curried apple fritter. And if you're unlucky, you could get 2 pieces. Boom, boom.
We had fun with it, and it was Ronnie's reaction to some of the things that made, obviously, the boy, Peter and Ian, laugh, because they put them in especially, sort of, I don't do that, and do I look like that, and is that what I say? And but it was a very funny episode to do, and it's a bit embarrassing now to look at from my point of view, really.
Well, got a rehearsal to go to. Must peruse my part. In the nicest possible way, of course.
Amateur dramatics. You'll never find an eligible young man if you're playing the back half of a horse.
It's my only pleasure, Mother. My one form of social intercourse.
Language, Muriel?
Sorry, Father.
Look, it's language, Timothy.
Of course, Father always said language, Timothy, at the wrong moment. It was never when he actually was using bad language.
Language, Timothy.
Sorry, Father.
But I did actually have that magic moment for a writer of hearing someone in the street say language Timothy to someone else, and that was great. Like a composer hearing their tune being hummed, you know. That was the nearest I'll ever get to it.
Oh, sorry, Father. You're toasting chestnuts.
Language, Timothy.
Bill Moore did relish that line because he had so few lines, poor man. But he was very good. He was a rock. And you need a few rocks around you, you know, if you're being funny.
Timothy.
Language, Father.
The person I've always felt sorry for is the lovely Marguerite, though, because we sort of understood that we might have someone who spoke with the voice of the audience. In other words, someone who said, oh, why don't you pull your finger out and get out of here and take part in life?
Muriel has the job of putting Timothy on the right lines. Telling him to go and buy a house and telling him to get on and do it. And she's always trying to sort of escape with him and take him away from Mother.
Timothy, go straight to bed.
Yes.
Tim, you don't have to do anything you don't want to. It is up to you.
Yes, you're quite right, Muriel. It is up to me. I'll go to bed.
And quick about it.
Tim, stay where you are. For God's sake, stand up for yourself.
She loved him to pieces. He was her big brother. But he completely drove her mad. And it was her quest to get him out of there. But I think there was a little smidgen of bettering Mother if she actually got him out.
They're 2 very strong women, and they're never going to get on, I'm afraid.
Don't be con. Tell the old dragon to pull her head in. Oh! Yes, you're an old dragon. You give women a bad name, you. You're a stereotype, you are.
A Sidney, did you hear what she called me? A stereotype.
Steady on, Mew. Old dragon, yes, but steady.
Well, I think there was always a subtext about Muriel doing things that she knew would upset her mother and making sure that the rancour carried on, really. I mean, that was the way they liked it to be, both of them, I think.
That dress doesn't suit you at all, Muriel.
I dress to please myself.
Yes, but some people are so easily pleased.
You do find that girls turn into aspects of their mothers, and what do they say? They say to the husband, you know, when you look at your wife-to-be, then look at her mother and see what you'll get, and be sure what you're doing before you do it. And so I think that was written in because it happens in real life.
Sorry, Mother, yes. Oh, sorry, Moo. Sorry, I thought it was Mother there for a moment.
Please tell me I don't sound like her. Not yet, anyway.
No, you don't, not at all. Except for one or two occasions when you...
I'll twist your arm.
That's one of them.
Well, she acts like the elder sister, though she's not older than him. She's the younger sister. But she is always trying to get him to do things, to go out, to actually go on a date and actually get there, which I don't think he ever did. When he had a date, something always went wrong.
Caught between two strong women at home, it was hardly surprising that Timothy got in a mess with the opposite sex in the world outside.
Whenever he was faced with a lady or anything remotely romantic or sexual, God knows, it frightened the life out of him.
Oh, stop it!
After 5 series and 30 episodes, the writers were beginning to run out of family storylines and needed new characters to spice things up. It was time for Timothy to stop dithering and find a serious girlfriend.
We'd written, I suppose, another character, and David Askey had thought, well, we'll use Wendy again. Wendy was very good, I must say.
Wendy Allnut had appeared in the first episode of Sorry as Timothy's love interest Annette. After making her TV debut in The Avengers in 1968, she moved into sitcoms like Man About the House in the mid-70s. When she returned to Sorry in Series 6, it was as a completely different character.
Jennifer Blenkinsop.
I'm sorry?
I'm Jennifer. The nice thing about having done the first one was that I sort of had an idea of what it was going to be like. So it's much less scary when you walk into the first rehearsal. And by then, of course, it actually felt like a family. It felt like a real family we were walking into. Brilliant. You said you'd meet me at the Moo Cow Milk Bar. You said you had a Vespa and that we'd go and see And God Created Woman with Bridget Bardot.
Miss Wimborne's class. You were in charge of the nature table.
I think that was a very clever way to bring her in, actually, that you know they've got this shared background and they've got something to laugh about.
For Timothy, escaping from his disastrous love life meant going in for amateur dramatics or unleashing his imagination, where he could become the opposite of what he was in reality.
That's awfully awful, isn't it, meeting again like this?
Oh, dear Jennifer, I've always loved you, still do, always will.
His Noel Coward sort of effete man on the balcony is wildly funny. For no good reason one can think of, really. But he's just very funny at doing it.
Do you remember, dear heart, that little song I wrote for you?
And especially when he opens the piano and does the Noel Coward piano, it's wonderful.
Faced with Timothy's blossoming romance, his mother is prepared to go to any wicked lengths to stop her little boy being happy and taking his first steps towards independence. Luckily, Muriel is there to fight his corner.
You and Jennifer are brother and sister.
Oh, congratulations, Mother. Wonderful, wonderful. I want you to know that you have just completed number 3 in Muriel's list of possible ploys to stop me getting married.
She was very clever, Muriel. But, of course, Timothy always fell for it. And if he hadn't had Muriel to put him on the right lines, he'd still be there.
But it wasn't Mother's meddling that scuppered Timothy and Jennifer's wedding plans. It was Jennifer herself when she dumped him at the altar. But was it really the end for them?
You know, I thought that actually Jennifer's storyline was really rather good. I thought it was nice the way it was sort of built up to this last episode. Will they, won't they, will they, won't they?
Well, of course they didn't. Unable to escape his mother's clutches by marrying Jennifer, Timothy again retreats into his fantasy world. A world where the writers had free rein to unleash their own fertile imaginations, and where life would deal Timothy a better hand. Some of the time, anyway.
Because of the boys, very, well-educated chaps that Peter and Ian are, their references to great moments in literature and history abounded,
In Sorry, we stole most of our story ideas, and why not?
Who hath done this bloody deed? I am not Hamlet. I'm Timothy Lumsden, the librarian. This is a dream.
Even though Series 6 had drawn in over 12 million viewers, Sorry was about to bow out.
I don't think anyone decided that that Series 7 would be the last. There was a suspicion in our minds that it was about time. And some of our ideas were getting pretty outrageous by then.
After all Timothy's traumas, Sorry had to have a happy ending, so the search was on for Timothy's perfect woman. David and Ronnie looked through past episodes for an actress who just might fit the bill and found Bridget Bryce.
I had a phone call saying that Ronnie and the producer of Sorry had decided that in the last series Ronnie was going to fall in love and he would get away from his mum and be taken off out of the mum's clutches. And what had happened was that Ronnie had, with the producer, had watched the 5th series back and the 4th series, looking for somebody who had very good chemistry with him. And they saw that scene, and he said, I want the girl with the fur hat, Bridget. So I got a phone call saying, Ronnie Corbett wants you to be in Series 7.
Bridget Bryce could hold her own against the men, appearing in The Professionals as Cowley's secretary, then in Coronation Street as one of Ken Barlow's 27 girlfriends. Now her sights were set on Timothy Lumsden.
And I think he was pleased that it would show a different side of Timothy, that Timothy was actually going to grow up and have a proper girlfriend. And it was a girlfriend who just seemed to adore him as well. She fell into his conservatory, dressed in a pink jumpsuit and a sort of crash helmet. She pulled the crash helmet off, and it was like love at first sight.
Sorry.
Not at all. Nice of you to drop in.
It was the best entrance I've ever made. Definitely.
I can't really believe that you're finally leaving.
No, today's the day. New life, new house. Pippa to share it with me. Unwedded bliss.
Lucky young dog.
I think Peter and I sort of owed it to ourselves to tie it all up. I don't think we were thinking of the comfort of the audience so much then as pleasing ourselves, making ourselves pleased, so that it was a pleasure to tie it all up, because by then we were getting ideas above our station.
In a scene that could have come straight out of Timothy's fantasy world, Pippa whisks him away from his mother in a hot air balloon.
It was nice it's a nice bit of storytelling that you managed to escape again from the tyranny of the home, much as he loved his mum.
He sort of never quite escaped, but until the end, when, of course, he met another woman who was just as strong as Mother. And so, of course, she hauled him off and took him away.
And in a way, I think it was right that he fell in love, because I think that gag had outplayed itself. He needed to do that. He needed to grow up and get away.
Darling!
Who's she calling darling?
It's you!
Me? I'm a darling. Never been a darling before. I'm a darling.
Time to go!
Darling, darling.
The way I played it, she was very warm and very loving and very unthreatening. So you could say, was there another little repeat situation of her being a bit mothering him a little bit? So was he actually entering another relationship that mirrored Mum again?
I vault into the saddle!
We're airborne!
I'm flying! I'm flying at last!
Yeah,
I think it would have been an interesting one more series to have seen the ramifications of him getting away.
I hope there's somebody grown up in charge.
Yes, there is! It's me, Mother!
Goodbye!
I was, in a way, when it came off, I was a bit disappointed, but I think we did about 6 or 7 series, so it wasn't too bad.
Disappointments aside, Sorry in fact had a highly successful 7-year run, appealing across the comedy spectrum.
I think people of all ages watched it, kids up to elderly people. I think people of all ages could identify with it and with characters in it.
Certainly a lot of the young people who are now comedians themselves, like, you know, I think of people like Frank Skinner and Harry Hill, everything, grew up as 12, 13-year-old, 40-year-olds thinking this little racy Tim Lumsden was a wonderful example how to backchat his mum. So a lot of them were great fans of it. They have since told me, you know.
As Timothy and Sorry disappeared into the wide blue yonder of sitcom heaven, Barbara Lott said farewell to her cheeky on-screen son and continued her career with 2.4 children. In 2000, she appeared in the last ever episode of Inspector Morse, and her own final TV appearance was in Doc Martin, shown in 2003. After Sorry, Ian Davidson and Peter Vincent worked on solo projects, and together on The Ronnie Corbett Show and Bruce and Ronnie. In 1998, they contributed to The Ben Elton Show, which breathed new postmodern life into Ronnie's chair monologues.
I hope you'll forgive my casual posture this evening, sitting on the arm of the chair. Something my mother always felt very strongly about. It'll be in the BBC complaints log tonight. 103 people complained about how often Ben said knob. And Ronnie's old mum rang to tell him he's going to ruin that chair.
A whole new audience discovered Ronnie Corbett in 2000 when he joined Sorry fan Frank Skinner in ITV's Christmas Panto. And in 2005, Ronnie C and Ronnie B reunited for the last time in the Two Ronnies sketchbook. The following year, Ronnie Corbett was paid the ultimate comedy tribute.
Ricky Gervais said, can you ring him or can he ring you? And he gave me a number. I rang. I said, he wants you to do something in the show. And I thought, that's very exciting. When I rang him, I said, it's very exciting to have a call from you. He said, you don't know what I want you to do yet.
Corbett. It's always bloody Corbett. So I expect it of him. But you're the new kid on the block, aren't you? I mean, how'd you fall in with this crowd? Is this it, or is there any more?
Just a bit of whiz, you know, to blow away the cobwebs.
As one of the nation's favourite all-round entertainers, Ronnie Corbett brought charm and vulnerability to the character of Timothy Lumsden. Sorry was just one more landmark in a career which has been part of the fabric of television comedy for more than 50 years.
Where are you going? You're running away.
He who fights and runs away, Mother, lives to sing. Oh, what a beautiful day!
Well, you asked to see it again, so one more time, take in all the colour, excitement and spectacle of the Olympics opening ceremony. That's in 5 minutes here on BBC One after the National Lottery Euro Millions draw.